Yeah, this is kind of my takeaway. I don't know if I have any players to really point out in specific teams or anything like that, but I guess looking at the Philadelphia model and just how they've started to like gobble up as much Georgia talent as possible. I started scanning around at other teams and just kind of going through each team's draft, and I found these trends kind of funny. But like Detroit, for example, in their first handful of picks, grabbed a couple of Alabama guys, a couple of Iowa guys. You go down to the Chargers, they grabbed not only Quentin Johnston, but Darius Davis and Max Duggan in their draft. Three TCU guys. Minnesota, first two picks, two USC guys, two LSU guys to follow. And it's just kind of like, is this trend, like, is this something that's been around the NFL? And it'd be, something you probably have to look back at and kind of see like which team started like developing these trends. But like, is this going to be like one of the next trends of, drafts to come where it's kind of like, hey, I'm going to go out and get Quentin Johnston, but I'm also going to grab that quarterback that he connected with. Like maybe it creates that camaraderie, in the clubhouse, or maybe it's something, they can, get the best out of both of those guys at the pro level too, just by having them, having worked together for so long, or just known each other's, strengths and weaknesses too, that they could share with coaches or something. But like, do you guys take anything away from that? Like, I don't know. I was just scanning down the board, but, just seeing what Philadelphia has been able to assemble there and how logically sharp it comes off as, like, do you think that has any merit for any of these other teams too?
Yeah, I'll take it. No, I definitely think it does. I think it's especially important when there is a high upside player there. You mentioned Quentin Johnston, and then Jalen Carter, right? Having that support there. So with Johnston, having that his college quarterback to point out, oh, you did this in college. Why didn't you do it here in the pros, right? Things like that, I think, are good call outs, and that can certainly also pertain to Jalen Carter, right? It's like, hey, Jordan Davis, you remember me, right? Like, why am I doing all this stuff wrong? You having that accountability partner, I think, can be really important for, again, like a player that just has all the talent in the world, but it just maybe needs a little bit of some construction, I think, from a friend of some sort. So I think that's good, and it certainly helps too if they fill a need. So I think that's kind of what they're looking at there, and we definitely see the Joe Burrow and Chase, Jamar Chase type of tandem there. I think that definitely set kind of a precedent for all this a little bit more of, but I definitely see that probably being more of a fixture, I think, in future drafts.
Yeah, I was kind of going to go multiple things here. I guess one would be that's a great example. I didn't even think of that one, right? When you have guys who are coming out in subsequent years, right? Particularly when it's a quarterback receiver combination. I mean, if you're Joe Burrow, you're the face of the franchise. If oh gosh, why did I just draw a blank? Jamar Chase is anywhere around the top 10 pick, and Burrow's like can vouch for him and say like that's my guy, and there's a connection. Clearly, that has to play into it to some degree. I was going to say maybe a little bit less though around like the specific team that you mentioned, Pat. I do think there's an element to like GMs coming in, and maybe a little bit related to what we were talking about earlier, and like championship teams and like cultures at the college level are going to get more visibility, right? And so I think naturally, like if you're a scout, where are you going to go to? Are you going to go scout people from like, I don't know, what's a mid-tier program that might, are you going to go to like a bunch of games at like Mississippi State? Well, maybe some, they probably have some good players. Or are you going to go to like an Alabama where it's like, we know there's like 10 to 15 draftable guys here. So they're naturally going to get more eyes on them. And I think when they're around that more, they see what the culture's like. And I think that they want to draft people who come from that kind of like championship DNA, that they're familiar with the way that Nick Saban does things and can probably relate to. I think that's probably one of it. I don't know that that means that they're going after specific guys from one team, but I don't think it's a coincidence that you see like teams that win are going to have more guys drafted, right? The flip side of that, though, then I was thinking, I'm like, well, hell, the best dynasty out there ever is the Patriots, and they're picking people from like the middle of nowhere. And in the draft, they're talking about like their board only consists of like 70 guys. I don't know if y'all heard that comment. They're like, their board is only typically like 70 guys. Like they don't even rank the rest of them because they're like, they don't fit into our scheme. And then they're picking this guy from like North Dakota State. And you're like, who the hell is that? And the guy's a freaking like Pro Bowler somehow in like 3 years. So it just blows up my whole theory of what I just mentioned. But yeah.
And no, and it is honestly crazy you mentioned the Patriots because that was the flip, like the flip other side of the coin, kind of like the flip side opinion. Because I was like going through these teams too, and I looked at the Patriots, and I'm like, well, they don't do it that way. So like, but there's got to be there's like a madness to kind of their methodology there, and it's like it seems to have obviously worked for them over the years. I mean, they obviously had TB12 as well, but no, it is kind of crazy. I just acknowledging that and kind of seeing like, is that a good strategy, or should you just go for the best talent or best fit out there regardless of affiliation to a certain university, among the draft picks you already picked.